the Escape Podcast. Monster Love.
We're here. It's the Escape Podcast. I'm Brandon.
I'm Josh.
Welcome to the world's worst podcast. Wait, no, that's not our tagline.
Oh.
Anyway, this is still Monster Month. Today is Poltergeist.
Yes,
This is a movie that you picked out.
it is.
Why did you pick this movie out?
I'd always heard about it, never seen it.
Not once.
Never. Well, I take it back. I've seen, like, bits and pieces of it, But no, I never really sat down and watched the whole thing.
Okay. Before we get started with that, one of the biggest parts of Halloween is
C. diff.
candy. What kind of candy did you always want? What kind of candy was the worst and what was the best?
I don't like certain off-brand stuff. I think that was kind of the worst.
Like what?
Just, like, no-name junk that...
Well, be specific. So, like,
remember.
what did you like when you picked out? You're like, ooh, and you ate all those first, like Reese Cups or Snickers or what?
Yeah, all that. Like, yeah, the little, like, Three Musketeers or Snickers or Milky Ways. Those were, like, the good ones. I liked the little boxes of Nerds.
And what was last to go in your Halloween stash?
Oh, they were like, I don't know. They looked like they were wrapped up almost like a Tootsie Roll, but they weren't Tootsie Rolls. They were something nasty. Like, I can't remember if it was like butterscotch or something.
I think I know what you're talking about. They're like peanut butter or something weird.
Yeah,
like normally I like peanut butter, but not that thing that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never cared. Like sometimes people give out bags of potato chips. I always thought that was kind of weird.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
I always like the Reese's. Sometimes people give out like the full size candy bars.
Yeah.
You'd have to like go home, switch costumes, come back to that house again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always like candy bars the most. Remember like the gold coins that had chocolate in them?
yeah.
I'd get those sometimes.
those are cool.
Candy corn, some people love them, some people hate them. I'm kind of in between.
Yeah, I agree. I can only have so many before they like make you feel sick.
Yeah, they have a weird texture to them. Licorice, I always hated black licorice.
Yeah, agreed. I hate red vines. I like, when it comes to licorice, I have to have Twizzlers.
I caught a conversation about candy corn not too long ago where there was an argument between two people where one person was saying that each color was a different flavor, and then the other person was saying the whole thing is just one flavor.
I always felt like when I was a kid, I liked to bite the white part off first. Mm-hmm. Because I think actually I did feel like it tasted a little sweeter or different than the rest of it.
I feel like I always did that too, but I don't know if I did it just because I wanted to eat the colors separately or what. So if you have the answer to this riddle, write to us at theescapepodcast16@gmail.com, or check out our Facebook, or leave a comment on this video.
No one will do any.
No, but we can always ask. We always do ask. So recently, we had Halloween come out, the movie.
Right.
Which is kind of like, it's a sequel to the original one and ignores all the other ones.
Yeah.
Although, if you watch it, if you've seen them all, there are Easter eggs for like each other movie. Yeah.
Okay.
Even the third one that doesn't have anything to do with Michael Myers.
So they actually referenced all the others, really? Huh.
It was subtle. So if you keep your eye out, you'll notice things.
I thought they were wanting to distance themselves so much
No,
from
it was
them.
either the way a scene was shot or something in the background.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool.
But no, like it pays homage to the whole series as a whole.
Sure. Okay.
Which is kind of neat. So the movie has done pretty well, and I could tell that it was going to do well when I went to go see it, and everything was sold out. The budget for the movie was $10 million. I didn't think it was going to be a lot. Usually horror movies can have a lower budget. I mean, for a horror movie, $10 million is a lot.
Yeah.
But as far as movies go, $10 million, it's not that much. So far, the box office, it's almost at $100 million now.
I wonder how much Jamie Lee got paid.
Probably a good chunk of that $10 million. A nice little chunk of it. So, yeah, currently it's at $94,656,400. Now, since, like, after the opening weekend did so well, there's been talks of reviving other horror franchises like Friday the 13th. People are asking about,
Did they do that already?
I think it was 2009 or 2010 they had a Friday the 13th, and it was okay. I was fine with them redoing it just because I like that series. Like, I'll go see any Friday the 13th. I don't care. So, yeah, there's been talk about that. People are asking about, like, what's this LeBron James wants to remake it? Well, LeBron James co-founded a company with his buddy, and they call it Spring Hill Productions. So he's hoping to do it. Like, there's nothing official yet, but they're working on it.
Okay.
Somebody eventually is going to... Spring Hill Productions is associated with Warner Brothers, and I was pretty sure that Warner Brothers had sold off Friday the 13th back to Paramount, who had it in the first place. And then also the people who originally made the movies, like, they can always say no to stuff too.
Gotcha.
So it's not for sure that Spring Hill will do it.
What's
but
your thoughts on that?
I'm sure somebody will do it. Oh, like I said, I'll go see any Friday the 13th. So I hope they do it. You know, some people get tired of it, but those people aren't the ones going to see the movies anyway.
Gotcha. Okay.
What's your thoughts on it?
I have no thoughts.
Have you watched any of those?
So little. Okay, I've seen the first of each, guys.
And that was it.
Sure. And I know I've seen Freddy vs. Jason.
Okay. Poltergeist. Go.
Poltergeist 1982 was directed by Tobe Hooper and produced by Steven Spielberg. It was made on a budget of $10.7 million and made $121.7 million. Has a 86% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes and a 78% audience score. Stars Craig T. Nelson, JoBeth Williams, and Heather O'Rourke. The chair stack scene was done by having all the chairs fastened together into a pyramid, which the crew quickly places on the table in one shot.
So what you're saying is, when they filmed it, they show the chairs, they're around the table. Then, without cutting, the camera turns to the side to follow the mother as she's walking around to the kitchen. And all still in one shot, when they come back, all the chairs are stacked up on the table in a pyramid.
Right.
So what happened was the crew came in, silently took the chairs, and then placed the already pre-built stack of chairs and put it on the table.
The bust of the paranormal investigator's face was expensive, and they can only afford to do it one shot. Instead of risking it, they had Steven Spielberg ripping it off.
Okay, I thought that's kind of how they were doing it. I don't think that shot looked all that great, to be honest.
Yeah.
Marty is his name, the paranormal investigator.
This, yeah.
Yeah, I called him Kevin Sorbo, and the other one was Lionel Richie.
The evil tree was based on Steven Spielberg's childhood when he said he was afraid of a tree outside of his window. The shot of the boy being swallowed was actually shot in reverse.
Okay.
The scene of Diane on the walls and the ceiling was done by having a rotating room with a steady camera.
They used that rotating room twice, as far as I can tell. You know how that works, right?
Yeah.
For anybody that doesn't know, what they do is they bolt the camera down in this room. And I'm sure it's super expensive to get these rooms, but they bolt everything down that they don't want to move.
Yeah.
And then they're able to turn the room, and since the camera's inside, it doesn't look like from the inside like the room is moving at all, but the stuff in the room will start flipping around and doing all sorts of crazy stuff.
Yeah, Fred Astaire did that.
When he was dancing on the ceiling?
And the walls and the ceiling, yep.
Okay, yep.
And they did it for the Sugar Ray music video.
It's a really cool effect.
Yeah.
Even if you know how it's done, it still looks great.
Sure.
I don't think, stuff, maybe it's cheaper to do it with CG, but it's a lot cooler to do it with the turning room.
There's a lot of debate on who actually directed Poltergeist.
I'm going to bring that up.
Tobe Hooper is credited for that, but a lot of the cast said that Steven Spielberg did. However, Spielberg denies this. JoBeth Williams was hesitant about shooting the swimming pool scene because of the large amount of electrical equipment positioned around the pool.
What a baby. How shocking.
During the scene where Robbie is strangled by the clown, the arms were a little bit too tight and he was actually being strangled at one point. The skeletons that emerged from the swimming pool are said to be real. JoBeth Williams did not know this till after the shot was done. Drew Barrymore was considered for the role of Carol Ann, but Spielberg wanted someone more angelic.
More angelic?
It was her audition for the role, however, that got her the part for E.T. Both of Robbie's main fears that plagued him were from Steven Spielberg's own fears as a child, the fear of clowns and the fear of a tree outside his window. Heather O'Rourke, who played the little girl Carol Ann, and Dominique Dunne, who played the teenage daughter, are buried in the same cemetery. The film was originally going to be rated R, but the filmmakers protested and got it to be a PG rating. Steven Spielberg worked on this film and E.T. literally back-to-back. Principal photography for Poltergeist ended in August of '81, then Spielberg took a few weeks off and began work on E.T., while Hooper spent the next 10 weeks of editing. Spielberg hired Tobe Hooper after being impressed with his work on Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The crawling stake was done by using a real stake which was laid over a slot cut between the tiles on the counter. 2 wires were fastened to the bottom of the stake, and a special effects operator hidden under the counter simply moved the wires to make the stake crawl. Craig T. Nelson and JoBeth Williams are 15 and 11 years older than Dominique Dunne, who played their teenage daughter.
Well, some people have kids young.
The word poltergeist is German for noisy ghost. This is Steven Spielberg's first film as a producer. Despite being a horror film, there are no murders or fatalities depicted in film.
It's just pretty good. Like, you think that a horror film, like, people have to get killed in order for it to be scary, but it doesn't necessarily. Like, a lot of people think of this as one of the scarier movies in the horror genre. Yeah.
The movie's line, "They're here," was voted as number 69 in the American Film Institute. Many people believe there is a real curse on the Poltergeist franchise because they use real skeletons on set.
Okay, so it came out in 1982. It stars Craig T. Nelson. Probably
Mr. Incredible.
Many people know him as
Coach.
Peter Delaplane in the
Yeah.
amazing blockbuster hit starring Carl Weathers,
Yep.
Action Jackson.
Yeah.
But I guess some other people might know him from Coach or The Incredibles.
Yeah. He was in Parenthood. There's a movie version, but there was a TV show loosely based off of that.
You were talking about that before. I still don't know
It's a
what
show Brittany wanted to watch, and it's not a bad show, actually.
When did it come out?
Probably ended maybe 3 years ago now.
And he was on it?
He was like the main character.
All right, so
Or one of the main characters.
how was he in this movie compared to like Action Jackson, The Incredibles, all that? Does it seem different to you? Because I remember when we talked about Action Jackson that it was a little bit of a departure because in Coach he was
villain.
pretty
Yeah.
serious,
Yeah.
but he was a nice guy, and then in this he's kind of like maybe your average dad.
I actually was kind of surprised they made him so
His part wasn't as
good.
big.
I was thinking, when he comes home and they have her, she's like, "Hey, look, you got to see this in the chair thing." I actually thought they weren't going to have it happen. Like, I thought it was going to be like this thing where...
Oh, he's not going to believe it.
He thinks his wife's
crazy.
going nuts. Yeah. So I thought there was going to be this big thing about, like, she's claiming stuff's happening when he's not there, but every time he comes home, everything's fine. And then finally it gets to this breaking point where something really crazy happens, and finally he believes her, like, okay, But they had him pretty much right on board and right with her, and he kind of becomes the hero dad. Like,
Yeah.
I just really wasn't expecting it.
So, this was directed supposedly by Tobe Hooper, who did Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Have you seen any of those?
I want to say I actually did see the first one.
The first one, if anybody out there hasn't seen it that's listening, it sounds a lot more gruesome than it actually is. There's a lot of implied violence without actually showing you a lot. But it was pretty good for a low budget, just independent film about crazy cannibal family out in the middle of nowhere. So yeah, they got Tobe Hooper to quote unquote direct this, and I'd heard rumors for a long time that actually Steven Spielberg directed it.
Right.
So this is the story. Due to Steven Spielberg's contract for E.T., he wasn't allowed while E.T. was in pre-production to direct anything else because
Okay.
they wanted him to be like
Right.
have it, like full attention on it.
Right.
So he was able to get the producer role on this movie. So he wrote it.
It's like a ghost director.
Yeah. So he wrote it. He was a producer. Like this, everything about this was Spielberg. So when you were watching the movie, did it feel like a Spielberg movie?
It did feel a little more like, in the beginning when they show like the guys riding his bike with all his beard and
Yeah.
kids are playing tricks on it. It did remind me a little bit of just
early
Goonies.
Spielberg.
Yeah, just E.T., like the kids, the group of neighborhood kids and stuff. Yeah, I could definitely see that.
So the idea is basically he hired Tobe Hooper just to help him on the movie and give him the director credit while he actually did all the work. So that way he could get around the contract
Right.
that he had signed for E.T. Also, this was written first as a dark sequel to Close Encounters of the Fourth Kind.
The fourth kind?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that right?
No,
Is it
third
Close Encounters
kind.
of the Third Kind?
Third kind. I thought you were just trying to be funny.
I think I combined two movies there.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which is a great movie. I love it. Had this been like a horror sequel to it, that would have been a really cool idea. I guess I kind of like not having a sequel to it too, though. I don't know.
Okay.
Have you ever seen that one?
Not all the way through.
Okay, so that's a cool movie. But when Tobe Hooper was signed on to do this, he wasn't up so much with the sci-fi aspect. He was more of the horror guy, and he wanted it to be more of a ghost story.
Gotcha.
So they kind of changed things around and then changed it to what became Poltergeist. Poltergeist, he said, is German for noisy ghost. I've read crazy stories. Like, I'm interested in that kind of stuff. And, like, poltergeist stories in real life, whether they're real or fake or whatever, a lot of times they revolve around girls. Like when a girl starts to get into like the puberty age,
Yeah.
that's when stuff starts to happen. So they think it might be something psychological or what.
Okay.
But yeah, a lot of stuff like stuff will be thrown across the room. It'll be kind of like a more violent
Right.
type of haunting instead of just seeing, the ghost of a little boy walking down the hall or something. It'll be something that'll scratch people and throw stuff around.
Gotcha.
And it doesn't usually last too long. They went into it a little bit in the movie, but
Poltergeist to kind of move on. At least that's what they said, right? Poltergeist, it's like it might be weeks or months, but then they move on. Where a haunting is like
yeah. Well, and of course they made a lot of their movie stuff up too. So
well, yeah.
And we'll get into that later. Anyway, I thought that was interesting. What do you think about the Tobe Hooper and Steven Spielberg situation? I had read also that former cast members said, that basically Steven was in charge. And due to the feel of the film, too, like, I totally believe it.
Yeah, it does seem more like a Spielberg thing.
Mm-hmm. It makes me wonder, too, because Steven Spielberg was heavily associated with Gremlins, and Joe Dante did that one.
Right.
And that one feels kind of like a Steven Spielberg movie. Maybe not as much as this one did. But I think that Joe Dante's style was already a little bit closer to Steven Spielberg's anyway.
The Dante films I've seen, I feel like it's
The Burbs.
The Burbs.
That one kind of feels like a little bit Steven Spielberg-ish, doesn't it? In a way.
I didn't think so.
I think so a little.
Okay.
Like when they're showing like the neighborhood and all the crazy characters.
Well, first off, I thought it was a cool way they introduce all the characters. At the beginning of the film, you have the dog literally just going from person to person. And I actually kind of thought, like, that's kind of cool. But and then it cuts to, so there's that creepy scene. You have the little girl wake up, and she hears voices. I guess She didn't say she could see them.
Well, the movie
mom
starts
asked her.
off. You hear the national anthem, whatever. The TV's going off
right.
like it used to do back in the day. It doesn't do this anymore.
Yeah, they're a very patriotic ghosts. They didn't interrupt that.
Right, thankfully. So what would happen back in the day is like cable. It wasn't on 24 hours.
Right.
Like, let's say like 3 a.m. or whatever. They would sign off and they'd play the national anthem or whatever.
I don't. Is that called America the Beautiful?
It was the Star Spangled Banner, I think.
Okay.
So
yeah, and they would show
that.
like the flag and the Lincoln Memorial. It's just very
patriotic stuff, and then
right.
sign off to snow.
Yes.
So it goes off to snow, which is kind of cool because it doesn't do that anymore. It makes me remember childhood. But signs off to snow, then the little girl wakes up, goes down, sits in front of the TV, and she starts talking to it.
And I thought that was great. I liked that they didn't have us get to hear what was being said. I thought it was actually creepier just to hear her. She's like talking to it. She's asking questions. She's answering questions. I thought that was actually really creepy.
Now, you have a young son.
I do. 3 years old.
And what would you do if you caught him talking to something like that?
Oh, that'd be creepy.
Would you be freaked out?
Yeah, that would be really creepy. There's been times he's got these little toys that, like certain times they just go off. So there's been times I've sat up, on a weekend and I'm watching a movie or whatever. It's maybe 4 or 5 in the morning, and I'll start hearing like his little toys like doing little music jingles or like.
And he's not playing with them?
He's in bed. No, everyone else is in bed but me. And the dog is sitting right next to me.
Okay.
And like all of a sudden hear like, count to 5. You did it! Ha 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 ha! It's pretty creepy. It's happened.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I've heard of that every now and then, where like a kid has an imaginary friend, or they do something creepy like that.
Yeah.
If I have a kid and they start talking to an imaginary friend, I'd be a little bit.
One
freaked
time
out.
I was putting Benji to bed, so I'm rocking him, right? And so I got him like this. His head's right here, and he starts looking up at something over us, behind me and over, and that creeped me out because he kept doing it. And I was like, what's up there? What do you see? I don't know. It just...
Sometimes dogs and cats do that.
Yeah.
And the dog
and they did this.
That,
yeah,
right?
they had the dog do that in this. It's funny. If this movie was made today, there would have been no way they would have took their time the way this movie did. So, again, you have her start off. She's, like, talking to the TV, but you don't really see anything crazy happen. It's just that. And then I think even the next time she kind of hears something or does something, they don't really have anything nuts happen, where a movie nowadays would have, like... where you see the glass of the TV being pushed out with a hand, just something like right away. Like this movie took its time, and I like that.
It kind of did, but then once stuff started up, everything hit the fan.
Once they get, you're right. No, they did. They took their time to a point, but once it hits, I actually wrote that down. It's bam, 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 bam. It's going.
It's super subtle for the first like half an hour, and then after that, it's just nonstop craziness throughout the rest of the movie. Yeah, there's something to be said. Less is more. I like that saying because, like, it's creepier what you don't see.
True, because to be honest, when they finally showed the little hand come out of the TV, it didn't look that great. Maybe it did at the time, but it didn't hold up as well. It actually seemed less scary.
A lot of, like, ghost movies these days, and I don't really care for ghost movies that much, to be honest, but, like...
Except for the newest Ghostbusters, that one rocked hard.
Yeah, that's our favorite movie.
Yeah.
So, The Conjuring and stuff like that, a lot of these newer style ones, it almost seems like instead of a movie, it's...
They're trying to be like a documentary or as if they're shooting a...
Well, I was going to say it's less of a movie than it is like a trip through a haunted house. Or like all these tricks and stuff are set up to kind of scare you.
Okay.
But like it's all fluff. There's no story there, and without like the story and all the important aspects that would go with making a good story, it's just gag after gag.
Gotcha.
Like, oh, hands came out and clapped. Ooh,
Yeah. We mentioned The Burbs, and I thought it was funny because you have that opening scene with the girl talking to TV. It's kind of dark. It's like it's supposed to be creepy. And then it cuts immediately to daylight, and the guy's riding down the street with his bike, and he's got the beers, and he's dropping them and all that stuff. Kids are playing tricks. It reminds me of The Burbs, which I know that came out a few years later, but, Ray hears the noises. He's out there. It's kind of creepy. He hears the tinkering. And then next day... the paperboy, and it's bright and sunny, and it's just that contrast.
I also wrote down it reminded me of Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and that's before that I read that it was supposed to be a sequel to Close Encounters of the Third Kind originally. Just the way Steven Spielberg has a way of working with child actors, of somehow being able to capture them just the right way to to really bring out like a performance that he wants, and it's really cool to watch that happen. And he does that with this girl. In Close Encounters of the Third Kind, there was a little boy.
Right.
And there was a scene that it always sticks out to me. When eventually we'll watch it.
Okay.
And we'll talk about it here.
The mashed potato scene?
No, it's the same movie, though. So there's a scene where there's like this house kind of out in the middle of nowhere, and there's a little boy. And here comes some storm clouds, and then you can see lights in the clouds, and here come like basically UFOs.
Yeah.
And Steven Spielberg... off camera, what he was doing is he was standing on a ladder and he was holding up some toys for the kid.
Yeah.
That way the kid had like a look of wonder in his eyes as he's looking up at these things. And he even points and says toys, which works because the UFOs kind of look like toys in a way. And, a lot of kids' toys light up. So it reminded me of that. Also, in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, there are some neighborhood scenes where like all this stuff is happening in the neighborhood. And he was so good at like doing this, like capturing like these chaotic moments that just seem so real. Like everybody's kind of doing something and having a conversation, and you can see all sorts of activity going on. It just seemed like life.
At first I thought, because I had heard, I think that it was like about Indian burial ground, which was not, I wasn't exactly right in what I heard. It's not necessarily Indian burial ground, but
I remembered it as an Indian burial ground. I think maybe when they get into the second or third one, it becomes Indian stuff.
But I was under the impression it was going to be like the entire neighborhood was having issues, but it really was pretty much exclusive to that one house for the most part.
Yeah, it would have been
like, at the end, all the neighbors see it and encounter it. There, people are getting knocked down, but pretty much it's all contained to that house.
It would have been kind of neat if maybe like some other people,
or
at least maybe their direct neighbors, like sometimes the toaster turns off or whatever.
Yeah, when they first showed that they're watching the game and the TV's changing, I thought that was going to be the ghost. And then they made it that it was the neighbors, their remotes reach across the house or the yard or whatever. But I thought that was going to be like the first like little
that
thing.
was kind of funny. Like the first thing, the TV's changing channels by itself. No, it's a neighbor.
Yeah.
They happen to have the same frequency on the remote.
Yeah.
Which is a weird issue. I don't know if that ever really happened.
Yeah, exactly. Have you ever seen or heard of anyone flushing a bird down the toilet?
I wrote that down too. That seemed a little odd. Like you'd think
I've never heard of that.
Put it in a shoebox and bury it or something. Throw it away.
Yeah.
But she was about to flush the bird down the toilet. The little girl's bird died.
Yeah.
Tweety.
So we're watching it and realized that the brother and sister share the same room. I was like, man, that's a bummer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they were both pretty young, so it wouldn't have been that
I know.
bad.
It's just,
but like, I think if up until maybe the age of 10, like if I had to share my room with my sister, it would have been okay.
Right.
But then after a while, she would have got really like on my nerves.
Is your sister hot? It's a joke. Really bad joke.
Not as hot as yours. Oh!
Was the mom smoking a joint?
Yes.
Okay. I was like, she is really giggly and stuff, and I was like, what is going on here?
He was being a little goofy, too. Maybe he was doing some of that secondhand stuff.
Yeah.
Jumping around shirtless on the bed and then, like, puffing his stomach in and out. Before, after.
They did a good job with little humor bits, and it's subtle, but I thought it was funny. Like, there's the scene, the kid's afraid of the lightning, so the dad's teaching him about, how to count, the lightning flashes, you wait for the thunder, and you count, and if it gets higher, that means it's moving further away. So he leaves the room, and the kid, he gets, I think, the 5 by that point, and it looks like he's like, oh, I can go to sleep. And then the very next scene, something clearly happened, and then both the kids are in the bed with the parents because they're afraid.
Yeah.
And that was just it, but I thought that was really funny, and they did stuff like that. There was
comedic
just
editing, yeah.
Little things here and there that actually made me laugh, and that's rare. Like, most of these movies...
Yeah, you don't normally laugh at anything.
Most of these movies, like, I could say, yeah, that was funny, but it didn't maybe make me laugh. Like, I didn't laugh like hard, but it's just,
Yeah.
But I was surprised by that.
Okay.
No, mine's all poop and butt jokes.
Did you catch any references in this movie? I caught at least 2.
A ton of Star Wars stuff around the kids' room. I saw that.
They had a lot of Star Wars stuff, which fits for the time, but also, Steven Spielberg and George Lucas are BFFs forever. So there's that. And then also, she was talking about the mom, because the little girl was overfeeding the goldfish. And she said, what happens if you overfeed them? They turn into sharks. I thought maybe that might be a reference to Jaws.
Oh, did not think of that.
Those were the only 2 I really caught. After that, I was probably more into the movie.
I've seen a lot. I didn't realize it.
Oh, there was one more. There's, I believe they were watching an episode of The Twilight Zone in one scene on TV.
Okay.
And Steven Spielberg had something to do with the Twilight Zone movie, right?
Yes, he did. Did he direct one of them?
I think he did.
One of the segments?
I think it's the one where, like, old people become kids. Yeah. So,
I've seen a lot of this movie's big scenes referenced in other things, not realizing exactly that it came from here.
Yeah, even if you haven't watched this movie, you know of something from it. Right, here is such a big quote.
Yeah, like, I didn't realize that "This house is clean" came from this movie. I've heard that scene many times, or that, I should say, line. Mm-hmm. I thought it was funny when he first gets home, he's picking up the trash cans from there, and she's like, Steve, quick, come here. I thought it was funny. He actually carried the trash can in the house. Like, to me, that was funny. Do you remember that part? Like,
just a little detail.
Yeah, just little things like that I found funny. Mm-hmm. And, but what surprised me is how well the wife took it all. Mm-hmm. Like, she finds out her house is haunted or whatever, and she was pretty much taking it pretty well there at first.
One of the subplots that's going on, which, like, gives them a reason to have a giant hole in their backyard, is they're getting a pool dug in.
Right.
And they actually have construction company. I feel like his tie with whoever built the subdivision is what's allowing him to use the construction company instead of digging the hole himself or whatever. Because it seems kind of weird to have a whole crew there to dig that out.
Later his boss comes to him. He thinks he's missing work.
Is it his boss or is it like a kind of an associate?
I'm pretty sure it was his boss.
Okay.
Because he's suspicious that he is going to move on to another competitor. So he's trying he offers him that land up top.
Maybe he's the type of person that designs it for them, like an architect almost in a way.
Could be, but he was also selling houses. They showed him showing houses to potential new residents.
A house that he built, maybe.
I guess. But I took it as he was like maybe like a top salesman for them. But anyway, regardless, he takes him up to that hill and he's like, oh, this would be a nice place or whatever. And he's basically saying you can have all this land up here. So
they're getting that pool dug in the back. And I assume that those workers were also tied in with whoever built the subdivision. By the way, his boss, the actor's name is James Karen.
Okay.
I recognize him from a couple other things. He was also in Return of the Living Dead, which I don't think we've watched yet. But we will eventually. It was a horror comedy. He actually died just a few days ago. He was 94.
Oh, wow.
He died October 23rd at the age of 94. He would have been 95 in November.
Oh, wow.
So Chris didn't get him. Anyway, so they're digging that pool. It's the whole reason that, because they want the scenes at the end where you're sliding down in the mud and all the skeletons are coming up through the pool, right? So the construction workers, did any of them look familiar to you?
No.
We have a poltergeist here. Yeah, I recognized one immediately, and just to make sure, I went and looked it up. It was Sonny Landham.
Oh.
Also known as Billy from Predator.
Was it?
Yep. Yep, I recognized him right away. And he was also in the great movie that we've reviewed, Look Back in Our Archives, for Action Jackson.
Yeah, I remember him being there.
He was the drug dealer in that. who
Right.
got thrown from one building to another.
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, I recognize that right away. They also bring up sleepwalking history on the mom's side of the family.
Right.
They mention it very briefly, but
Because they were hoping that's what the little girl was struggling with,
or they almost allude to maybe like there's something that runs in this family where they're attracted, they attract like whatever these entities are that are bugging the family.
Oh.
Although later on they explain it as the buried bodies, but maybe there's more to it than that. And I think they go deeper into that in the second one and in the third one.
I thought, even though they, did a good job, there was nothing wrong with the actors who portrayed them. It wouldn't have been kind of cool if the paranormal investigators were the Ghostbusters before they hit it big in their movie. Come on! Would that be kind of cool?
Man.
Like a cameo before they had their own movie?
I'm just amazed. I want to see that now. I want to see Poltergeist meets the Ghostbusters.
Well, I just thought it would have been great if you would have had them. Because remember, even in Ghostbusters, they talk about how, you guys spent the last year talking to everyone that claims they had a spook. Like, that'd just been kind of cool if...
That would be one of the, it would make sense, and it would be one of the greatest crossovers ever.
Oh, yeah.
Had they
And
been
just
able to
that,
do
yeah.
something like that, that would have been amazing. The, like I said, I had the nicknames for the two.
Yes.
Lionel Richie and, what's his name, from Hercules.
Kevin Sorbo.
Kevin Sorbo, yes. That's who they both reminded me of.
Okay.
Yeah, there's the team of paranormal investigators who are shocked by the amount of activity that's going on in this house, and because normally most of the time it either has an explanation or nothing happens.
Right.
Here, everything's happening and it doesn't let up.
I liked how when they invited them over, they were so used to it, it was almost nothing to them. Like, they were just like, oh, it will...
Yeah, in the way that they were acting.
This sounds, this will happen in increments of 3, or, they don't like it when you try to open this door, so we just leave it shut. And just different things, like they just kind of learned how to coexist with them for the time being.
Well, it's funny. I've watched a lot of that paranormal, investigator type stuff. Not like Ghost Hunters where the lights are green, where the camera's green. And they're like, what was that? That stuff's all crap. But I've watched just stories, people telling their stories, and a lot of times it is kind of like that, where they become familiar, or there's a haunted restaurant in Trenton.
Which one?
The TVs ended up buying it, but it's that big historical one.
Oh, okay, I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I went out to eat there actually as part of a wedding dinner, and I asked the waitress, I'm like, hey, I heard this place has a ghost in it. She's like, yeah, stuff happens, and she told me a few stories, and my sister actually ended up working there for a short time, and she said she encountered some things too. Pretty crazy.
Interesting. Let's get a job there for a week.
But I've heard lots of stories like that where people become familiar with the ghosts. And they get to learn their behavior and oh, don't worry about that. That's just Sam, So I found those little types of details, they kind of looked up people's ghost stories and kind of included them into this story. I appreciated that. I thought that was cool.
No, yeah, that was cool.
They actually did some homework, even though it's silly ghost stuff,
Well, I thought about, the fact that, and this is kind of jumping ahead, but just because you said doing their homework. So, Ghostbusters, we haven't done it yet. That was actually, me and you haven't done it. It was actually one of the ones that Dave and I did, but there were so many technical issues we had to...
It's a lost episode.
It's a lost episode. So we'll do it again at some point. But, when I was a kid watching Ghostbusters, there's the slime, and I didn't make out much of it.
Ectoplasm.
And then you find out that supposedly people that believe this, they believe that if ghosts were real, they would be leaving behind residue. And what I thought was kind of interesting is when they do the whole rope scene and they come out, they're covered in jam, essentially.
Yeah.
But I wondered, was that supposed to be ectoplasmic residue similar to that of...
It did. It looked like strawberry jelly or something.
It did, yeah. I think it looked better in...
That's what I assumed it was. That and Ghostbusters both had their versions of ectoplasm.
Right.
And when they threw the baseballs and stuff and he caught them.
They were covered in that too, yeah. So, the room swirling scene, what'd you think of that?
I thought it was both silly, and it didn't look... By today's standards, it didn't look great, but by 1982 standards, it did.
I agree. I thought it was a cool idea that just there was that much activity. It did look very dated, but I
don't think it looked very dated. I think it looked just dated. If there's a difference.
They just now became old enough?
No. You can tell they're using old effects, but I don't think they necessarily looked bad. And I think that back in the day when this first came out, those were amazing special effects.
Yeah, all in all, I thought it was a cool idea that just there was that much activity.
Mm-hmm. The special effects in this movie, let's talk about those for a second.
Sure.
I think they run the gambit between, some I thought were bad, when the guy was ripping his face off, it didn't look all that great.
No.
And then other ones looked really good, and some of them were just practical stuff, like them sliding people across the floor. That looked good.
Yeah.
Some of the apparitions that appear look really cool. Other ones you can tell is like whatever process they used to use where they'd kind of color on the film, like when the hand comes out of the TV, and you can kind of tell that's what they're doing.
Okay, so the actual skeletons, whether they were real skeletons or not, I did not like them because there was no movement. Once they came in the pool, and I think one of them jumps up on the car.
Yeah,
like they just
you wanted them to move.
You know what they reminded me of? A haunted house. A haunted house where just like it just kind of falls forward and shakes a little bit, but like it didn't really. It didn't seem like they were grabbing. Kind of like in Raiders of the Lost Ark when Marion. She's like kind of hallucinating for half a second. It seems like all these bodies are actually grabbing at her. It was a little more scarier, whereas...
Well, I don't think they were supposed to. They were just supposed to be... That's the people that were buried in the cemetery. The whole thing is happening. I wanted to see them
grabbing
because supposedly... I just saw it as the bodies that were...
Shut up!
The developers had moved the cemetery up to the hill or whatever.
Yeah.
They had moved... They claimed they did, but they didn't move the bodies.
Right.
So it must have been Craig T. Nelson's house was buried on the biggest part with the most bodies or something. Like most of them were there. But so they didn't move the bodies. They were too lazy, wanted to save some money.
Whispering. So they get to this point where the paranormal investigators decide to stay the night, and there's all this whispering.
Yeah, that was
weird. Cranked my TV up, and I don't know if it was just the copy I was watching or what. I could not make out anything they were saying. It went so long of whispering, it was like, come on, like I had a big problem with hearing them.
It was a long time to do the whispering, I thought.
It went on a really long time.
Yeah.
And then a little bit later, you get more whispering. I think it's when the psychic lady comes in.
Zelda.
She's kind of whispering at first, and that kind of bothered me because I just couldn't make out. That
actress's name is Zelda Rubinstein, and I've seen her in all sorts of stuff. She's a dwarf essentially, but like her proportions look normal. She just looks like a smaller person. Yeah. Because you know how sometimes like the arms will be stubby or the legs. Well, her proportions are right. She's just very small.
Yeah.
I've seen her in the biggest other thing I can really remember her from would be Tales from the Crypt, one of the episodes there. But she's a character I've had a problem with in this movie. I remember I've watched this movie a handful of times. The first time I saw it, I think I loved it. I think it was great. And then I got to the point where I hated it mainly because of this character that knows everything, the psychics. Yeah. And that's like my thing. I brought it up before, like in Jeepers Creepers, they have the same,
the wise woman, the Yoda.
The same spiel. A psychic woman tells you everything about the monster. Well, thanks for taking all the mystery away.
Yeah, I thought it took a real dive. When she came in and she's giving her big, long speech, she's basically the Yoda. And... she has her, like, get down on her level, and I was just, like, it slowed down the pacing to me, and I just didn't care for her character. Right after, when it's time to actually move, it picked up again for me, but, like, that little part, it was just, like, building up, dip, and then back going again.
So if I ever made, like, a horror movie, horror comedy, or whatever, this is what I would do.
Okay.
When the people who are having a problem need help with answers to their problem, they're going to open up the phone book. If you don't know what a phone book is, it's this thing we used to... Or they could go online.
What is a book?
Or they could go online and look it up, and they'll find Madam Expositions, psychic readings, or whatever. So they'll go to the character that's going to give them all the answers to whatever's going on, and then that character will die of a heart attack before they're able to say anything.
Yeah, I know. I just mean, but to me, it wasn't just the fact that she knew so much. It was just like, I don't know, like... They were building up to this big thing, and then like it was just taking so long. Her dialogue was so long. I was thinking like, man, I wish they would have not given her so much to say.
Yeah, and it always annoys me too. Like on top of you explaining everything to me, like let me figure it out for myself. Yeah. Like they always say, the book is better because your mind comes up with a better vision of the story than just a movie can. Basically, you're seeing somebody else's vision. But then also, like, how do you know all this stuff?
I mean, I guess you're supposed to believe that didn't she even say something to the effect of, like, she's done so many of these things?
Yeah, I'm sure. Like,
but I thought it was funny then when it came time to actually go through the portal. Well,
here's the thing. Like, if everything she knows all this stuff because she's encountered it so much, she's so familiar with it, then why is it still a mystery? Like, why don't we all just know this as scientific fact? And I wouldn't say a psychic is a very scientific method of doing anything either.
I don't know.
Anyway, it's just those types of characters annoy me.
Marty, the other paranormal investigator, he has that scene where he has a cut or something on his face? He starts pulling off his face.
Off, yeah.
And obviously, it turned out to be a nightmare,
hallucination.
a quick nightmare or hallucination, whatever. And I was thinking, like, even still, why would you pull your face off? Like, if you had a cut and you pulled it and just like a big glob of flesh came off, why would your instinct be to just keep going and just tear yourself apart? Like,
I took it as that was him seeing a vision. It wasn't him actually thinking he was doing it.
Okay. Well, it seemed like when he came out of it, he was like, oh, and like, oh, you know.
Well,
okay.
if I saw that in the mirror, I'd check my face too.
Yeah, anyway, that was it was over the top. It didn't look that great. Mm-hmm. It didn't add anything. I guess that freaked him out enough because he never came back, right?
Yeah, they had him leave. They said he wasn't coming back, but the other guy would stay.
Okay.
So some of the special effects, like when the ghosts are all coming down the stairs, I thought that looked really cool.
Yeah, the woman.
It was a bunch of them, actually, when they rewound and watched the tape. Like, I thought, like you, at first it looked like a woman in a dress coming down. Yeah. But then when they rewatched it, it was like a bunch like Civil War soldiers and stuff.
Really?
Well, they looked like that. I don't think they were because they were in California.
You have to show me again. I didn't catch that.
When they watched on the tape, they caught like 50 ghosts walking down the stairs.
I did not see that. So the psychic says at one point she can only hear her mother's voice. Yet then she has Craig T. Nelson, the dad. Get stern with her. Get mad. Tell her you're gonna punish her.
I didn't catch that.
I was funny. Like, what? Like, okay. It was just kind of silly. I don't know if this is me just making something out of nothing. I thought it was funny. So they're getting ready. The one guy, he's marking the tennis balls 1 and 2. Craig T. Nelson comes in with rope and he just throws it at him. Like, it was, I don't know, maybe it was funny to me because, like, it just came across like, here, just do something with it. Like, I brought it to you, now you do it. It just was funny to me. Did you catch that or no? I guess not.
No, I didn't really notice that. If you wanted to get rid of a tree, what do you think the best way to do it would be? Hit it with a tornado. That was a funny scene, I thought.
Yeah, that tornado didn't look very good either.
It just kind of came down, sucked up the tree, and then went away. And they're all standing outside looking at it.
Yeah. Yeah, that scene didn't make any sense. What are we led to believe that the tornado was
paranormal in a way?
Yeah, it is weird. So, okay, they go through this portal, and then immediately the psychic says, get them to water. Not that they have to tell us everything, but I was just like, when did this come into play? That
I don't know if they said anything about it in the movie.
Not that I heard.
I've heard stuff like running water, like
but
ghosts
they
can't pass over it or something like that.
Well, they immediately had them wash off. It wasn't about ghost. It was about
getting the jelly off, yeah. If it were me, I would have just made a bunch of toast.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, we get to the scene where they're packing up. They're getting ready to move, and if you didn't know any better, like I didn't, it seems like this is the end of the movie. They pack up and they leave and roll credits. Mm-hmm. But then you could tell they're lingering on things. He's talking about, I got to go to the office and get some stuff. And I was like, so I looked at the timer, and I still had 17 more minutes of movie to go, and I was like, oh, crap, something's going to happen.
The Coen brothers are notorious for that in all their movies. Like, it seems like they get to a point where the movie's over, and then it goes on like another 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Like we just did The Big Lebowski not too long ago. Mm-hmm. They had the scene where like Donnie died, but then like, the whole situation with the rug was resolved. Finally, like they got the woman. Bunny Lebowski had returned. Everything seemed like it was kind of wrapped up, but then they still had to deal with the kidnappers, and that was like the extra part. Like it seemed like the movie was over, and then boom, here's the other plot that we need to wrap up. And they kind of did that too here. Like it seemed like the movie was over, but no, we want to get one last scare in.
Yeah. So then she says, we're not staying another night here, and then she goes inside. She's making a bath and relaxing. I was like, how could you? After all that, I just don't.
Well, the house was clean.
Still, I just...
Yeah. Something I thought was funny. So, like, they had alluded to maybe that their one daughter, the older one, she's 16.
Sure.
They kind of hinted that she might be a little bit on the wild side when she's not at home.
Right.
So at the end of the movie, all the crazy stuff is going on, and the daughter comes home in the middle of all this crazy stuff. This is when the house is, like, getting sucked up.
Okay.
So she was off somewhere else, and she came home.
Yeah.
She hops out of this car, and... I noticed it right away. Did you see she had like big hickeys on her neck?
I did not.
That was a funny detail.
Okay, at one point after he tucks them in, Craig T. Nelson, he opens up her room, and she's got something like, it looked like magazines. She quickly covers them up. What magazines were those?
Those were textbooks for school. She didn't want her dad to know she was studying.
Okay.
I thought she was just trying to hide the fact that she was on the phone. I didn't notice the magazine part.
It looked like magazines to me.
I would assume it would just be like a teen magazine or something. Like
Okay.
maybe she was supposed to be asleep. And
Right.
it was funny because he waited for a second. It's like, get off the phone.
Yeah.
One of the things I kept looking at throughout the whole movie were the stairs. The way the stairs were made. They were made in such a way where it looked like it was a design that kind of flowed its way upstairs.
Yeah.
But if you put the camera at different angles, it would look twisted and not right. Mm-hmm. And it always made the stairs look very interesting to me.
Okay. Very astute. I did not catch this.
Okay. Most of my notes are pretty much over. I did try and catch like any of like the names on the tombstones when they were up on the hill.
Yeah.
I was talking to Mr. Teague was the name of that character.
All right.
I only caught one. It said Becky, born 1903, and that was all it said. That was the only one I saw.
So I knew that the clown was like a big thing in this movie, but when you're watching it, they really didn't do much with the clown at first. Like, there was the part where the kid's trying to go to bed, and it looks like this clown is just staring him down.
I'd read that was like the clown attack was rated among the scarier moments in movie history.
So as it's winding down, you know, and I was like, oh man, I always thought the clown was like a bigger thing in the movie. And I will admit that I actually jumped. I think
when the
twice.
clown got him?
No, it was actually the part where he's looking at the clown and he's kind of creeped out. This is kind of somewhat earlier in the film, and I think he turns, he's like trying to ignore it or something, and he looks back. It's just like right there. Like the camera almost made it out. Like when they turned to it,
It had those like little tiny, almost pointed in a way, the bottom teeth.
Yeah, and he throws the blanket or whatever over it. I think the one scene I actually jumped just a little bit because like when they show him and he looks back, it's just bam, it's right in your face.
You know, I was thinking about that too. Like as an adult, you're like, well, why don't I just get this thing out of my room?
Yeah,
or throw it away even. But as a kid, like your parents could put something in your room like that, and you would never touch it. You just leave it because you think it's supposed to be there.
Yeah.
Like you almost like you get in trouble, or you know it's part of the room.
Yeah.
Like you're not supposed to touch it, so you just leave it even if you were afraid of it.
right.
I was never really afraid of clowns.
No, I wasn't either. Now that clown, just because they made it look so creepy, I mean, I could see why someone might find that creepy looking, but no, I never had a problem with clowns.
I think that's one of the phobias that gets more attention than it really merits. Like, I think a lot of people are just like, "Oh, clowns are so creepy," just to get attention somehow.
I feel you. Anyway, they didn't do much with the clown in the beginning. It's just like a few scenes where he's just creeped out by it, and I had always thought that the clown was like a bigger part of this. So it seems like the movie's winding down. I remember thinking like, oh, I thought the clown was like a big deal. So then again, we cut back to mom. She's taking a bath and relaxing after all this stuff. And then you get the real clown scene. I think that's the one where he looks at it. It's there. He does something. It looks back. It's gone. You know, in these movies, you find people never look up. Like, you have all this crazy stuff happening. Like, they'll look around, but they never look up. You ever notice that?
Sure.
Okay. Well, the kid actually looked up, and I was like, props to him for actually thinking, like, this thing could be anywhere. I found it amazing, though, that he had the guts to bend down and look under the bed. Because if I was a kid, the last thing I would do is get anywhere near the floor. But anyway, so then the clown, of course, when he pulls back up, the clown's right there. And I thought it was kind of cool because he's fighting this clown. And the next scene, it's like he had enough, and he's just ripping the stuffing out of it. And he's like, basically, like he's like a slasher. He's just like murdering it. I thought that was kind of cool.
So you talked earlier about Benji like looking up at stuff, and you're like, "What?"
That
are you
was
looking
one
at?
time, yeah.
So, and then we're talking about clowns. Now, when I was little, really little, it must be a dream that I'm remembering, but I have a memory of I had this clown lamp, like a nighttime lamp, and it was in the shape of a clown. He was holding balloons, like a red one, a yellow one, and a blue one. And I have a memory of my parents closing the door, and then after a while, the lights would come off, and so like the balloons would light up. That's what would light up, the red, yellow, and blue balloons. I have a memory of like the lights coming off of that and floating around the room.
My old room in Lincoln Park, it was wood paneling on the walls. And here, give me a pen. I'll draw a picture. But there was two of them. And in my little kid head, this is what I saw.
So tell me the story. Start over.
So the wall paneling in my old bedroom was wood paneled.
And there's a shape in the wood panel?
Two of them, side by side. And in my little kid brain, you know, his back, his head, there was a knot right there for his eye, and it looked like his hands were coming out like this. in front of him.
It looks like Snoopy to me, the way you drew it.
Well, I'm not an artist, but it was very creepy to me. And I remember
I used to do that too, like look at the wood grain and like find shapes and stuff in it.
Anyway,
our brains are wired to do that,
I guess. So anyway, yeah, I thought it was funny that the kid just goes psycho on that clown. He is ripping his stuffing out. I just thought that was kind of cool that he.
Well, he hated that clown.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. Like usually, you think in this type of movie, the other kid or the parents would come in the nick of time and tear it away and maybe just throw it somewhere or something and run out of the room.
Yeah.
But like I like that he like got fed up, had enough, and just went psycho on it. I was kind of wondering if the Beast, as they called him, was going to manifest himself.
Well, it kind of did at the end.
No, he did in the end. But as I'm watching it, not knowing exactly what's going to happen, I was wondering, are they going to have the actual Beast? Because the only time they had before this manifest any ghost was, again, the woman coming down the stairs. You said, and I would like you to show me when we're done, that you see other silhouettes or whatever.
I thought the Beast at the end, that thing looked really cool.
Well, hold on.
That came out of the closet there?
Yeah, the giant head?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that one was pretty cool.
It reminded me of Evil Dead 2 at the end. There's a scene where, like, this giant thing they summoned comes in. Basically, like, they're in the cabin. One arm comes in through one window, one arm comes in through another window on the sides, and then the head pops in through the door, and it's this gigantic, like, skeletal monster demon thing.
Yeah.
It looked more like a puppet. This one looked really cool.
At one point, I think it was after the mom slides in the pool, she has to fight her way off these skeletons, and then the neighbor guy and his wife help her out. You hear the kid screaming, and he actually, like, I can't remember what exactly he says, but he says something to the effect of, like, what's going on? Or he, like, seems hesitant to go in there. And I'm thinking, like, most people you hear children screaming. Most people have the mindset of you run towards screaming children. And I just thought it was funny that he helps the mom out, but then he is, like, afraid or hesitant or whatever to go and assist the children. Mm-hmm. Another thing, so they're getting in the car, they're trying to leave, he can't find the keys. I'm thinking, like, just run down the street. Like, I thought it was funny, like, they acted like, you would think that was, like, a bomb was going to blow up or something. Like, they're taking the time to, like, where's the key? They could have just ran faster and got away from it. I just thought it was funny they were wasted so much time trying to get a key so they can go 20 miles an hour down the road.
And they drive away while everybody else in the neighborhood is gathering around their house.
I thought the house imploding was actually really cool. Mm-hmm. I thought that looked really good, and
it was a neat idea too.
Yeah,
it's a shame that house was really nice too.
The cemetery was only where their house actually stood because, again, nobody else in the neighborhood seemed to have any problems until they were standing outside witnessing their house.
Yeah, it was weird.
I thought him, when he took the TV out of the hotel room, I thought that was funny.
Yeah.
It was a funny little way to end it.
Yeah, and it begins and ends with the TV,
yeah,
like the bookmarks type of deal.
That's
yeah, it's a nice touch. The movie began with the TV, ended with the TV, and it just stayed on the TV as credits rolled. One thing I did notice in that scene where he put the TV outside, they go to a Holiday Inn.
Yeah.
And I normally think of Holiday Inns as like the types of hotels where like you're inside hallways and stuff, and then like the windows look outside. But this one seemed like the older style, the cheaper style, where like
that would be a motel,
where your door is on the outside, yeah. And I noticed it looked like it was raining kind of heavily, but they had no sound for the rain at all. Zero sound. You couldn't hear the rain at all, but you can see it hitting on the balcony and coming down over the awning.
Okay, see, I don't remember it raining, but I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, I'll after we're done, I'll show it to you. And once you notice it, it's kind of odd that they don't have the sound effect for rain going at all.
Okay.
This movie was remade a few years ago.
Yeah, I knew that.
I didn't see
15,
it.
I think.
I didn't see it. I'm sure you didn't.
No.
I've heard that it was.
I know Sam Rockwell's in it.
I've heard that it wasn't the great.
Dang it, what's that guy's name? Jared Harris?
Jared the Great?
Sure. Yeah, I think it's funny, too. They had the TV would never, like, at the beginning, it was like almost like a strobe light effect. You know, obviously, it's to embellish it. Yeah. But it just was kind of over.
Yeah, they had the snow going, and then they also had strobe lights. You can notice, actually, I think it's like the second time it happens when they're in the parents' room, and the strobe lights start going off, but they're trying to get you to feel like it's the flicker from the TV, and maybe if you're not paying attention, you wouldn't know. But you can see, like, her shadows, like, they're coming from the top.
Yeah.
And they're behind her in two different directions, so it's like two different strobe lights going off.
I thought there was at one point when they show a shadow, like, you see her... You see the shadow, and didn't they show like a male shadow beside her, which was obviously supposed to be the Beast?
I don't recall that part.
I thought I saw at one point.
That'd be cool if they did.
Okay. Final thoughts? I'll let you go, or do you want to go?
Yeah, this movie is like considered a classic. It's a Steven Spielberg movie with Tobe Hooper's name on it. Mm-hmm. A lot of people find it to be genuinely scary. There are parts that are creepy to it. I don't particularly like ghost stories as much. I just don't. Mm-hmm. If I'm going to watch, I'd rather watch a monster movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the movies that I find scary are the ones that, like, after you're done watching it, you don't feel right. Mm-hmm. This just is all, like, entertainment, like a big haunted house type of deal. So, the psychic lady really ruins things for me. Watching it this time, rewatching it this time again, I did enjoy it more than I did the previous time that I had seen it. I had considered myself to hate this movie.
Oh, really?
But it's not that bad. I'm going to go with a C.
Okay. So, I obviously never seen this movie. In fact, I think the thing I saw the most of was the Goldbergs episode where Adam sees this movie for the first time. Anyway.
The Goldbergs TV show?
The Goldbergs TV show. There was the episode.
They had an episode about this movie?
Well, it's an episode where Adam, the main character, goes to see this movie.
And he gets freaked out?
He gets scared.
Then the whole movie is like a scary Halloween type episode?
Do you really care?
No.
Okay, forget them.
Okay.
So yeah, I had never seen this movie before, just seen bits and pieces and other things and whatever. This is actually the Monster Month movie I've enjoyed the most. That's right. I agree with you. I do think it dipped a little bit in when the psychic was giving her long spiel. However, right after when they finally got into it again, I think it did pick up.
I enjoy it more when the stuff is more subtle than after everything starts to kind of go, bat crap crazy.
Yeah.
I
like the way they took their time and didn't rush it at the beginning. Again, yes, once they got going, they went high speed, but a movie like this doesn't get made really today. There's a lot of times when I was expecting something to happen, or just, I guess, maybe more used to it.
Conditioned.
There's a good way to put it. Conditioned that, okay, it's time for something big to happen, and then they still didn't do anything, and I just thought that was cool that they, again, were taking their time. There's actually some good, funny bits in there that I think actually work, and they never felt overdone or out of place. They actually were funny, and I liked that. Like, that's another thing. I think most of these modern movies, they try to cram the comedy way too often and way too high, and it doesn't work, There were a few times I felt like there was clearly some kind of conversation that took place, and there's a scene where she shows him the thing about the chair, and they're talking, and then it immediately cuts to them at the neighbor's house to ask him if
that was such a goofy scene, too.
Yeah, so I don't know if it's just something in the editing, but, like, the whole thing with, like, the tennis balls. He writes 1 and 2 on the other.
It feels like something got cut.
What's significant, like, to prove that was, in fact, the same ball that he sent through? Or, like, I don't know what was exact. Yeah, I had a really hard time hearing the dialogue when they were whispering, and like I said, that happened twice. I guess you were able to hear it better than me. I
did have to turn the movie up pretty loud, though.
Although some of the effects are dated, they didn't bother me or take me out of the film. And I actually jumped a few times, like I said. The
only effect to me that really kind of stood out as being like, wow, that's not that great, was the one where the guy was ripping his face.
Yeah, that was... And that one, that was way over the top. Like, everything else was... To me, that wasn't even scary. It was just silly. Like, everything else was... Mm-hmm. Actually seemed more appropriate for the film. That seemed almost too grotesque for this film. Like, it seemed out of place almost. But so I am going to give this movie a B-.
Dum dum dum. It happens from time to time.
What's that?
Where you give a higher score than I do.
Yeah. So I'm not saying I love this movie, but I actually liked it pretty decently, and I this is the one I enjoyed watching the most this year for Monster Month.
Anyway, so that wraps up our episode for Poltergeist. Not to be confused with Troma's Poultrygeist, which I plan on seeing at some point. All right, from the Escape Podcast, we bid you adieu.
Happy Halloween!
Whoa. 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 Ninja, please.
I'm not done.